Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. It's Tom from Came to Believe Recovery here on Recovery Live on our Friday live stream where we talk all things addiction. This is our Easter special, I guess, this weekend. Today being Good Friday, if you're in the Christian world, today is Good Friday. Sunday being Easter Sunday, so it's a great start to spring for me. I love this time of year because the days are getting long and everything's warming up and everything's blossoming. So just so excited to be on today. We got a wonderful discussion today. We got a couple of great guests coming on today. And without further ado, I'd want to bring on our co-host for today is Alicia Martinez from California. How are you doing today, Alicia?
I'm great. Great,
Great.
great.
It's one time, guys, where it's better weather in New Jersey than it is in California.
I can't believe it. Is it still that warm today?
It's not quite as warm, but it's not raining and miserable.
It's raining and like 45 out here right now, which I love. I don't want summer to come yet, but yeah, it's cold.
Well, we're ready for summer here. When we bring Julie on, she'll tell us about the snow in Wisconsin, which she was telling us before we went on air today. So we'll hear
Hmm.
about that. Maybe Lisa will even come on today. We have some people in the backstage we don't usually have in our backstage. She's waving her head no.
She doesn't want to come on.
Let's see who we have joining us already. Connie Tippy, Jamie West, who got snow wherever they are. There's Thad Johnson. Hey guys, when you're putting your names up, if you tell us where you're from, we'd love to give a shout out to where you're coming. We love to see our reach and where people are that are watching us. Any questions, comments? Put them in that chat. We'll put them up. We'll tackle them anytime. There's Doc Roth from Las Vegas. Willie Crow. Wow, they're all joining us now, Alicia.
Yeah.
It's because of you.
Yeah, right. They
Want to
didn't
say
know I
anything?
was going to be on. It wasn't like broadcasted.
Wow, they all see the stream, so they know that you're on. So
Hmm.
exciting, Alicia. And we've been in meetings all week, and we've been talking, Alicia and I, and the rest of the team. Um, and I think I mentioned this last week, but we're looking at guys having the largest single month on retreat attendance in Came to Believe's history.
May, right?
May. We have 4 on ground retreats. And right now, Redwood Glen, which is the one that's in Loma Mar, California, everybody, and it's sold out. So I don't want to talk about it too much.
Don't
We
get
are
them too
taking a
excited
waiting
about
list.
that one.
Yeah. I mean, we're really excited. I mean, when Ricky Wade and I talked about starting this, and I think at least you were in on some of these conversations. This is the first one in the Bay Area, and we thought, well, if we get 20 or 25 to start, it'll be a win. And I think we're up to 60, right? Because Sarah's going to give me the nod from behind. If that's it, we're up to 60. So it's more than we had to add 2 bunkhouses that we didn't know we needed. So anyway, guys, the word, we've got it out there in the reputation or the word of the recovery. I think it came from city teams and what success we had there, that it's really drawing a lot of people wanting to come up and hear this message that we've been spreading for so long.
No,
Then
that's
we're going to,
amazing.
yeah, then we're going
Do
to
you
be in,
think too, though, that like Corona spreading around and people being isolated and more people were seeing like, wow, I might have a problem. So then there's even more people admitting it that could give us more numbers and we can help even more people. And now people are coming out, going
I,
out.
somebody else said that the other day, that they thought that these on ground events where people were much less afraid now and more
Mm-hmm.
willing to come to them. It could be part of why we're having such great. It just could be you guys in California are a little crazy. I figured.
Maybe.
You think April Bowlware is from Union, South Carolina. Welcome, April. Michael Galante from New Hampshire. Kyle from Northern Maine. There's some people we haven't seen before. Maine and New Hampshire on following us. So welcome on Recovery Live. I hope that we're able to spread some wisdom today and have an interesting conversation. Today we're talking about helping versus enabling. So we're going to touch on the harm reduction stuff a little bit, and we're going to touch on boundaries and things like that as we tackle the subject of how to deal with this addict person who is or isn't ready, right? And what do we that aren't in it do? But let's finish our retreat talk, right? Then we're going to Amory, and we're going to Leesburg in May, and then in Amory, which is actually the sanctuary, and Julie can talk about that in a second. She will be there. That one's sold out too, I think, right? Or just about.
Is that second weekend in May now?
That's the second weekend in May, right? And then Leesburg down in Florida. We do have openings down there. So, guys, anybody down there in Florida who wants to come and hear this message, get on the website today and register. There's openings. And then we're back in California, in Nevada City, which is where Alicea and I met last year in September, where she had her first Came to Believe retreat. And we're going to do the second one there. And that one also is filling up, but there's open spots there. So all of you in California, if you're very disappointed that you weren't able to get into Loma Mar, 2 weeks later, we're going to be in Nevada City, and it is drivable, right, Alicea?
Yeah. I think well, if you live closer to Loma Mar, I think it's about 3 hours, which isn't that bad, but it depends on where they live, right? Because the people, like if they're in Oroville, it's an hour and a half to Nevada City, and it's probably an hour and a half to Loma Mar, so they're right in the middle, I think. Yeah.
So it's big. Then we have, I think we're going to be back in city teams, Alicea, in the beginning of June, and then we're in Kansas City in June, and then it looks like we're going to maybe be in Indiana in August, and maybe back at Loma Mar. So we'll see. Yeah, because of such demand.
And then Nevada City too, right, in the fall?
And then Nevada City in September. We do have one, September 9th through the 11th. It is on the books to do. So I would think so. So lots of great things happening in Came to Believe, and we did start to talk yesterday about a virtual retreat again. We're trying to figure out an open weekend.
How?
When our leaders and all can be available. So we'll see. But we do know that there is a demand for it out there, guys, and we are going to make our efforts to bring another virtual retreat. I mean, our goal would be to do 2 or 3 or 4 of them a year, because there's definitely value, and there's an element of a demographic that really needs that. So, Alicea, why don't we bring on our guest today, and let's start our discussion about helping versus enabling. And I want to welcome Julie Smith from New Richmond, Wisconsin. How's everything up there today, Julie?
It's pretty good, cold and snowy, which is not great this time of year, but other than that, things are going great.
How much snow did you get?
We just got a dusting, just enough to cover the grass. But when it's mid-April, we're kind of looking for, warmer weather and sunshine.
Is it summer for like 2 weeks in Wisconsin?
3, usually 3, approximately.
In June or July?
July-ish, yeah.
And what's summer? I mean, what's like 100 degrees?
Mid-90s, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. To hear you had 80s out there, Tom, I was a little like, oh, well, looks like I'm moving to the East Coast.
It was gorgeous here the last couple of days, and today is a beautiful day so far. It's a little chilly, but it is beautiful out. I think we're in the 60s. So it's asking me to go live here. I'll go live there. So what's our discussion today now? Now, first of all, let's talk about where Alicea and I are Came to Believers, right? We are recovered addicts, where we came from that thing. Right now, that's what we do. But Julie is, well, I use this term usually, but she's a normie.
Right? Oh, she's one of those.
Yeah, I'm one of those.
But it's really interesting, the heart that Julie has for addicts and people in recovery. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys do up there in New Richmond, what you do with the Onyx House?
So my husband and I own sober living homes for men in New Richmond, Menominee, Amory. in this region. And so we provide safe, sober housing and give them some structure and accountability to help people like rebuild their lives when it's just been, destroyed by addiction. And then we also promote them to go to Came to Believe. We've been very supportive of this mission. We pretty much tell everybody to go work the 12 steps of AA. It's what we have in our area to help with recovery. And when I heard about this, I was just like, oh, we can do that in a weekend. Let's go. And so I really promote a lot of my guys to go. And it has been an awesome, awesome experience. I worked through the steps, I don't know, a year ago probably, and I did it from a codependency standpoint. Once I realized that all of the people supporting people in addiction, it's the same steps when you are coming from an Al-Anon standpoint. So I went through the steps too, just to see, what it was about. So I understood it better. And then I have been at every retreat since. So it's a awesome program.
Well, thanks for coming on. How many men do you have in-house right now that you're helping?
We have 50 beds for men, and I have 2 family units. There's 2 families who are in recovery. And then we are opening another 10 beds in Menominee in 2 weeks.
Wow. It's really something, it's that one step beyond what we do, Alicea. She actually lives with them and deals with them. We go through retreat with them and then send them home, right?
So you're a normie. Sorry.
I don't actually live with them. I don't.
But I mean, they live.
I do.
But her life is.
Your life is with them. I know. That's it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But I'm interested, Julie. You said you're a normie. How did you get the passion to do this work if you're not an addict yourself?
My mom was a lifelong alcoholic. I have a kid that struggles with addiction. And then I worked as an RN in a treatment facility as a nurse manager for about 3.5 years, just trying to help them get their lives back on track. And then we realized that in Wisconsin, there weren't any solid sober living homes where we're from. So we just decided to give it a shot and see what happened. And now we just bought our 6th home.
Wow.
So it's
That's amazing.
number 2 gap in care in Wisconsin is safe, sober housing for people in recovery.
Wow. You got some fans out there, Julie. Tim Seitz says hi. Chris Lyman says hi.
Hey, hi, Tim. Hi, Chris.
Did you see April's comment? We should talk about that one. That's a good one. That my mom was my biggest enabler, but I hold myself responsible. That's a huge statement right there that shows her responsibility and her maturity to see that. That's pretty amazing that she could see that her mom was enabling, but then now she's taking responsibility for that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about it. I know that Julie will bring a perspective from the sober living standpoint of what are the lines that you have, in the boundaries, and what would where would you consider it? And some might consider enabling, allowing someone to be in a sober house. Somebody might, to say you're giving them an easy place to stay, especially if they aren't hard in recovery. I wouldn't say that, but there are those that could. And we'd love to hear anyone's opinion about all of this. Put it in the chat. We want to open conversation, and then we'll bring Kasera on after a while, and she can, when we get into some of the harm reduction stuff from her standpoint, with her work in this whole helping versus enabling when dealing with addicts. From my standpoint, just to start it off, just personally, I think that maybe a little more of a boundary with people, a little less what I would have called enabling, might have helped me come to my bottom quicker. If I hadn't been given, some of the breaks I was given, and I wasn't in a position exactly where I was life-threatening, I needed to be pushed to the bottom. And I was just one of those who I was going to take you for everything you were worth until I couldn't take you anymore, And so that type of enabling, if that had stopped, that type of enabling, that would probably have helped me. So I have that little bit of an attitude, and I check it now based on a lot of the things I'm learning, and I'm growing in this whole thing, where my initial response is, kick them out, make them pay consequences, fire them, da, 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 da. And I don't have that so much anymore, but I still think at some point, right? This is what we're talking about. Where's the line between setting these boundaries and saying enough is enough, and you're going to have to pay consequences, and helping them and keeping them so that they're safe and alive until they're ready?
Well,
And when do they take responsibility, or when are they even able to take responsibility? And yeah, that's very subjective.
it's very subjective. And so when you're talking, helping versus enabling, it's really a path. It's a path for anybody who's trying to help somebody in addiction. When you find out day one that somebody is struggling, you might have a different boundary than you will have, day 300. And some of it is, it's kind of a, trial and error almost of where you are going to land on your boundary. And I've worked with a lot of families on that just because I did it how I did it with my family doesn't mean that's going to work for you. And you just have to have respect across that whole array of opinions. So when I talk to families, I'm just like, if you have to set your boundary where you want it, and then you have to stick to it. And then if it's not working, then reevaluate your boundary and, move it which way you need. So that's kind of how I've always approached it. I think there are whenever somebody talks about enabling, it gives some very clear ideas in a lot of people's heads. But for me, I'm like, it's a judgment call. It's subjective, and everybody's going to approach that different. Tom said in the sober living homes, we have really strict boundaries. We don't allow people using. You are asked to leave. There's certain things we watch for when you come into that home, because it's communal living and you have to be able to, participate with the other household members and, kind of maintain a peace in the home. So we have some boundaries around that. And so far it seems to be working.
So I think that's interesting that if someone's using, they're out. And
Yes.
Julie, if they're out and they're out on the street in front of the place, that's where they're out?
Yes.
What if they use and leave and come back and use and leave and come back and leave and come back? Is that okay?
We have had that happen.
And that's
So,
okay?
It
has to be okay.
It is. And so, we set up some structure around that so we don't have people continually like relapsing on the weekend and coming back on Monday. When people come back, they have more structure. They have to go to more meetings. There's a different, and they understand that. So their first step when they want to come back after a relapse is they have to call me. And then we talk about what they're going to do different. And we talk about what their new structure is going to look like. And then they get to decide on if they want that level or not. And usually people want it. And I've had some really good success with people coming in and doing what we're asking, doing a 30 and 30 while you're working, when you're like day 3 or 4 sober is no joke in this area, especially my guys like in Menominee, or not Menominee, Amory, that have like 3 meetings, 4 meetings a week, and they have to do a meeting every day. They have to think about it and put the recovery before anything else. So it's not always easy. And sometimes they decide not to come back, and I have to be comfortable with my boundary. So we have had to establish this program and get comfortable with where our boundary is. And then they sign an agreement. They know exactly what the expectation is. They know what will happen if they relapse. They know exactly where our stance is. And I think that's important for anybody setting a boundary. You really have to be very clear with whoever you're working with on what your boundary is, because they're going to try to push it and manipulate it.
So tell everybody maybe a little bit, because now I'm thinking this. What do they have to do to be in that, to be at the suburbs? Do they have to pay? Do they pay? Does insurance cover? Or how does that work?
So it is a private pay. So everybody who comes in pays programming fees to be there. Insurance is not covered by insurance. The homes are not staffed. They have like a peer leader in the house that kind of maintains the order. But in general, to get in, they fill out an application. We talk about what the recovery path is going to look like. They do have to be clean coming in. So, they understand what they are getting into, because coming into communal living in recovery with a whole bunch of other dudes is not always what they think is ideal for their recovery.
No?
No. So we talk a lot about that. I understand it is a struggle for you. You're going to have anxiety coming in, and we talk about those things so they understand what they're getting into. But that's often what people need, especially the men that we work with. A lot of them are homeless or coming out of jail, or, feel like probation is breathing down their neck all the time. I'm like, well, let's try something different. So that's what we do.
So how do homeless and people from jail have money to pay for you?
Good question.
Mm.
We require that they get jobs, which takes 2 to 3 weeks, probably less in this market because everybody's hiring, and then we'll put them on a payment plan to start out with.
Oh,
Sometimes they'll have family that helps them,
mhm.
or sometimes probation will help, or a church. We really try to have them draw on their resources to try to get in, and if they can't, then we do a payment plan.
I mean, it's a real great step up, because it's not a lot of money, right, Julie?
No, to
That they have
stay
to
there?
pay. Yeah.
No.
It's very much a doable option for somebody with just even a minimum wage job, even working part-time. They could probably pay for it. Is that
Yes.
true?
Yes, we
Yeah.
have had people who were doing intensive outpatient and working about 20 hours a week who are able to afford it.
So everybody knows that this really is meeting these people where they need, when they're at that level of coming out of it with nowhere to go. It's that first step in recovery, when there's, and here they have a place to come. So it's awesome. I think it's a great thing. I mean, I've been talking a lot with Julie over the last couple of years, as we've been getting to know each other more, about how Came to Believe can help even more, because in the path of these people's recovery while they're in the sober houses. And I know that Julie, she doesn't require them to go, but you strongly encourage them to come to the retreat, right?
Yes, we actually require our house managers to go
Oh,
before they can be a house manager.
yeah.
There's really great healing at the retreat, but it also gives you a really good exposure to the steps and, how quickly you can get through them. So we're just like, just go. You'll
Mhm.
get to see a whole different level of energy for people who are recovered. And that is the most amazing part about getting through that weekend. And I just need to say hi quick. Hi, Marcy. Hi, Leon. Hi, Tim. You guys are great. Thanks for watching.
Aw.
I think one of the things that helps with yours, Julie, is one of the things that Came to Believe, and we've all struggled with, is follow-up. People leave the retreat, and how do we keep them connected, and how do we have them at meetings? Well, these guys all go back to your houses together. And one of the leaders is leading a Came to Believe, like a 10, 11, and 12, a Living in the Go meeting. They're living it and being supported on it. So, it's a great model. We want to have more of that just happening organically, but
Mhm.
so it's great. So I don't know. I would certainly not call any of that stuff you're doing enabling. I would call it helping for sure. I mean, it's in the category of helping. It's not handing anything out, and they have boundaries, and they have things they have to manage in order to stay. So that puts the responsibility on them. The model
No,
seems great.
I think it's amazing too that they are taking responsibility for themselves, getting a job to pay for the thing, which means they want to be there. That's
Yes.
huge. If you have
Yes.
like what's it called? Something in the game. What's that comment?
Skin in the game.
Skin in the game.
Yes.
Mhm.
And they're
Mhm.
more apt to do the thing because they're paying for it.
Yes.
Yeah. Not saying that they can't benefit from, but just like with anything, if you're paying, then you're kind of paying more attention and want to get the benefit from it because you're paying some money in there.
Do you feel like at any point, Julie or Alicia, when you guys were in your journey in life that you've actually feel like you enabled somebody where you do?
Yes.
Your child.
My child, I enabled my mom for a long time, and my sisters and I did not address her. We did not address her alcoholism to her. So 35 years of drinking and doing all the things, and we would just talk about it. Basically, we'd talk about it behind her back. Um, and the few times that we really had to dig in and send her to detox or whatever that was, I was always like right there, my sisters, all of us right there, sitting at the hospital, talking to the doctors, helping her get to the next step, getting her back home. And the doctors often would have recommendations like, hey, maybe you should go to, transitional care to do physical therapy. And she would say no. And we are like, okay, we'll take her home. And we believed her. And that was probably the biggest thing that stuck with me over the years is we believed her when she said she was going to AA and she was leading the meetings and she wasn't drinking but her behaviors all said that she was. And we just buried it. So but probably my first experience with setting a boundary was she told the doctor she was going home. They recommended further care and treatment, and I was her ride. And so I dropped her off at home and said, listen, there's no food here. We threw out all of your food because it was bad. And if we need to go to the store, let's go get things. And we did. We went and she picked up 5 things, and it was her only trip that I was going to make. And I dropped her off at home and I said, well, if you're good, you're good. Let me know if you want to go and do what the doctors are recommending. Otherwise, I'm not helping. And it took her about 3 days to call me and say, I think I need to do what the doctors are recommending. So we packed her up and took her to a transitional care unit for physical therapy for 3 weeks. And then she did the things. She started doing a little bit better, but she lived on her own and isolated. So it was never a good path for her. But that was probably my first experience.
Is she sober now?
She actually died about 5 years ago.
Oh, but did it eventually work? No.
And she had early onset dementia from alcoholism and then died from the effects of alcohol. A long journey.
Yeah, that's sad, Julie. I mean, and unfortunately all of us in this game, this happens.
Yes.
Don't make it. Mary Mullen has some interesting comments that are in the comment. If you guys see it, she says when she was using, her good friends pulled the tough love thing and stopped talking to her. All right, that's common. Like we hear people say that's the advice people give sometimes. Then they heard I was going to rehab, and when they got home, they talked to me again. But now listen to the second one. This is interesting. However, her family doesn't think she deserves anything, or her kids. They don't trust her. So, and they don't want to talk to her. I find that very interesting. I think that was more my case too. My family was the last to trust me and really listen than my friends when I came back in. But that's very interesting, Mary. Thanks for sharing. Let's talk about one of these cases that's really, and I have a friend, so it'll be, Jim X and his parents. And this would be one of these where I would be on the fence with it. I don't know what to do about it, but he's a drug addict. He's a heroin addict or meth. It's one or the other. It's whatever he can get his hands on. He's overdosed 3 or 4 or 5 times. He's been to 5 or 6 rehabs. The parents, there's always the latest rehab to send him to. There's always the latest thing. They take him back every time. It's been several years. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. But every time it's always, yeah, I'll do it this time. And let's go to the new rehab. It's geographic change. It's the different kind of rehab. It's let him come back home because they're afraid he'll die on this next rehab, which he may or may not. So this is this case. And we can bring Cassara on here in a minute for her 2 cents on this, because we get into this element here where do we say no to this person who actually might die if you shut them down? But how long do they keep going with this and sending him to rehab and spending the money and being lied to and being cheated and just over and over and over? What is that line?
Go.
It depends. It depends. It depends.
But I hear these
So
stories. Have you guys heard these stories? And
I
it's
hear
Yes.
them
they don't want to
all
lose
the
their kid.
time.
Yeah.
I think the
All the time.
parents need a boundary and say, you go and then you go to a meeting every day and you meet with me on Fridays and you go to counseling or whatever the things are.
Mhm.
And if not, I love you. I want to help you, but I can't do this anymore. And it's for your own good, or right? I don't know.
Mhm.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, and I'd say a lot of families just need to know how other families have dealt with it, one, and almost need permission that that's okay. It's okay if you set up a boundary and then hold to it. And you're going to make your person is going to be really, really mad. But that's part of it. Part of it is what level of chaos do you want to have in your life when you are supporting somebody in addiction? And you get to decide that. So if this family is deciding that we are going to do whatever it takes and everything, whatever treatment we have to send them to, anything, then that's their boundary. And then they get to revisit that every time he goes to rehab, every time he fails, they get to revisit that and decide again, is that still going to be your boundary? That's what happened to me with my son. Yes, I'll help, I'll help, I'll help. And then over and over and over, it was a struggle. And so I reevaluated my boundary. And it ended up to the point of like, hey, if you're using, don't talk to me. I couldn't do it.
Mhm.
So over the
Yeah,
years, he respected that.
do you think that this is the question about all this? I think is
Mhm.
did the boundary, did a stronger stance bring him to a place where he was ready to get better quicker than had you not done that?
I don't know, but it
Yeah, I
helped
mean,
me. It
all
helped me.
right. Well, there's a fair question. I mean, I've often told people, set your own boundary, make sure the addict isn't hurting you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Protect yourself. I mean, that's a
Right.
fair thing. I've said that too. And then I have another a story where somebody did that. They enabled what they would call and kept him. And in the vein of keeping them alive, and about a year or so into it, the person did get their together and decided to get into treatment and is now recovered. So here's that story where they stuck with them even when people were telling them not to stick with them. Set that
Mhm.
boundary.
Mm.
And who knows had they said it, because it could go either way, guys, right?
It could.
They
Yeah.
can go out on the street and overdose and die, or it could have the effect that you kind of hope it would. Tough love is going to get them to say, oh, all right, now I know. We all know as addicts, it's not that easy. It's not like a little kid. When you're in the heats of addiction, it's not so easy to make that. Why don't we bring Cassara on and bring her into this conversation? Oh, sure. She's making a face. She has to come on anyway.
Hello.
And I know that
He's telling on you.
you could probably wear on this. Well, Cassara's had a lot of experience, and all
I
of you
know.
that have
Go ahead.
watched this show has had some experience working in the harm reduction field. And I think that some of this, like I'm talking about, might be in that where a parent is just overboard and just keeps rescuing them over and over again, would be in probably the category of harm reduction. And how long do they go? I don't know. What have you seen is that a story that's familiar to you? That one I told where a parent would just constantly save them and save them and save them over and over again. And
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of people where it was their son, their daughter that was using, and they were, trying to figure out like, what do I do? How do I help? And I think everything Julie said is true. It's, setting a boundary for yourself, but also I don't have children, so I'm not going to comment on that because I don't have a child. And I know that that's, you love them, you want to do whatever you can to protect them. So I can imagine that I would do whatever the hell I had to do to make sure that they were home safe and alive and nothing else would matter. And then you have to also think you have to take care of yourself. So I think it is that boundary, but that's for yourself. That's not to shame them or say that you don't love them. It's like, you also have to take care of yourself, because if you can't take care of yourself, you sure as hell can't take care of them either. But I know that we had craft training, and it's community reinforcement and family training. And it trains the family and the person that is in active use together as well. And it just teaches them boundaries. And then it's showing the person that's in active use, okay, what does that boundary mean for you? And how do you feel about it? And how are we going to function as a family unit in this current moment with someone that's actively using? And how are they going to function in a family unit that can't accept that active use? So I think like that's basically what Julie's kind of talking about too, is teaching families like, okay, you have to set boundaries. But I think that's so subjective, right? Like Jessie Blanchard, who we had on talking, she has a daughter that is in active use, and her daughter will, go out, do whatever she does. And she'll call and say, I want to come home. And Jessie says, come on in. I don't care. And she's still in active heroin use, but Jessie's okay with that. Like, she works in the field, and she has a needle exchange, and she's okay with that. And that's a part of her life. And like, she makes I remember she showed how to make like a shards container one time. And that's her boundary. That's okay with her. And that's what she wants. And her daughter is with her and doing better now. So it's really subjective. It's about what boundary that you have. What are you comfortable with? But I just think in the other side, when it's not family related and it's working in the field and going out and like handing out needles and things. And I said this before offline, like when someone's in that sort of dependence and they are full on just in a spiritual malady, everything, and they're homeless and in the street, to me, enabling is not possible, because to me, defining enabling would be they are continuing this behavior because of something that I'm doing that's allowing them. And if I took my action away, then maybe they would stop. In this case, they're not stopping. They're not thinking about that. Like, they don't even have a place to stay. When it's -3 degrees out, drinking's going to keep you a little warm. You're not going to feel that. Or using, right? You're not going to feel that. You're not going to feel your hunger. You're not going to feel maybe the sores that you have, right? So why would I stop? It's taking care of me. It's keeping me alive. Maybe they have trauma, and that's the only thing keeping them alive. And for me, I'm like, yeah, I want you alive long enough that one day maybe you're just like, oh, I need something different, or maybe we can find you housing. So to me, in that aspect, helping them with clean needles, they are going to use a needle, whether you give them a clean one or not. They will pick it up off the ground. And a needle, I don't know if anyone's ever seen a needle like under a microscope that had been used once. Like, it looks like shards. They're going to use it, and their veins are going to collapse. And they might end up with HIV, Hep C, abscesses, right? So now that's an even bigger health crisis that's going to spread. So why not give them clean needles? And we minimize that. We minimize dirty needles everywhere, and we keep them alive, and we just help them help. We're not enabling, because it's not possible. And that's just how I see it. And I think it's very different when you experience it, right? I can't comment on family because I've never had a family member in active use, and I'm not going to step outside my lane. But I agree with everything Julie said, so I agree. And I can imagine that if I was in that position, like when you love someone, it's hard to pull away. It's hard to figure out what to do. So I don't think anyone should feel like, oh my God, I was enabling and this. Like, that's hard. That's an awful situation to be in. And you should talk to Julie. More knowledge on that.
Put her phone number in the chat box.
Oh man. I also could say, I've talked to a lot of people about needle exchange stuff because there's a lot of solid opinions on that, right? And I always say, if you're working with people in addiction and trying to get them to want to change their life, you have to meet them where they're at. And when you are participating in a needle exchange, that's where they're at. And at some point, you will have somebody who comes there because you are the one helping them in that moment to look for services to get help. And so it's a really valuable harm reduction tactic. And I've had numerous conversations about that because a lot of people think it's enabling. And I agree with you, Kasara. It's not. It's helping, but it's also meeting them at this point so that if they want help, they know where to go.
I feel like that's similar with money, besides like boundary wise, but like I used to be like, I'm not giving someone on the street asking for money. They're going to go buy X, Y, and Z with it. Like, not with my money, you know, on my high and mighty before I was obviously educated on the matter. And then I was educated on the matter and I had working with people and some friends in recovery. And specifically Kelly, I was talking about her, but Lisa knows. She said, she's like, okay, like what if they're about to die and they want to go, you know, they're about to go to rehab, but they have to get right before they can go in. Like they're going through withdrawal. And your $10 is going to keep them alive. And the next day they're going in. Then what? And I was like, oh. Or she's like, they're about to go, you know, participate in sex work, even though they don't want to, but they need the money. But then you can just hand them $20 and now they don't have to do that. They're going to go use it to buy food. So when I think about like that, I'm like, yes, it doesn't matter where you're using with it, because if you need it and you need to get right, you're going through withdrawal, you know, like alcohol withdrawal, you can die if you're doing it by yourself. I don't want you to die. Here's $10, here's $20. Like, so I think and again, it's what you're comfortable with. Like now after being like educated on that, having people, friends, coworkers that had been homeless and like are like, oh, that was me, and someone gave me that, and here I am. When I think about that, I'm like, oh my God, I can't not think about it now. When I see someone, I cannot think about it now. I'm like, what is your story? What happened? What do you need? Because you're educated on it and you see it like a little differently. So like, I just think people should read and like learn more and try to kind of see, because it's very different when you haven't personally experienced it and you don't know, and then you learn, and it's like it's a whole new world of things you were like, I was just like jaded to because, you know, I was privileged and I didn't have that aspect in my life.
There's this attitude that it's a lifestyle choice, Kasara. You know, I mean, I think a lot of people look at the homeless and the person begging for money and say, I earned my hard-earned money and you're just this, you know, you made this lifestyle choice to just be a bum, right? We're hearing that more and more these days. And as we get into this and learn more about this, we know it's not a lifestyle choice for a lot of them. They didn't choose to be this way for whatever circumstance and a level of addiction and disease and mental illness and care. They're in this place. So that judgment is not any good. I love the distinction that you made. And I think it's really important for everybody to really wrap their head around the idea that somebody that's in that level, Kasara, that outside the level of really active deep addiction, there really isn't any enabling. It's not a matter of enabling. It's a matter of helping and getting them into a baseline where they could even make a decision to do anything. I really think it's very important for us to say those things clearly, because it's hurting us across the field in addiction recovery to break this idea that the addict has a lot of say in what's going on when they're in it. And when they get to Julie's level now, right, it's so good, they do have some say. And so these levels of boundaries make total sense. And actually they need them, right? They need that at that point. But there's that difference from where they come off the street and they need to just be kept safe, have food, whatever they can to get to that place. And it's a different conversation. I think and I don't know that I've ever heard that, a conversation like we're having when I've had addiction conversations where we talked about these things with such clear distinction.
Yeah, I've never heard it described like that with the enabling thing. Kasara, thank you for opening my mind, because I lean towards thinking it is. And I don't want to give money to the homeless people because then they'll just be there tomorrow when I see them. And, you know, and I never thought of it really the other way.
Well, there's this story, you know, this is what, of course, everybody hears this one story, but you guys probably don't remember, but the guy that was washing windows outside the Lincoln Tunnel, and this was a few years ago. They don't allow it anymore. And they found him in a nice townhouse up in Midtown Manhattan, and he had been dressing down and washing windows and begging enough money to have a townhouse, and he was living pretty high on the hog. You know, that hurts everything because it makes everybody seem that way. But somebody will grab onto that story, and that fuels the whole thing.
Yeah.
That they're just bums.
That's why I think it's so important, like how Jesse had talked about, like just saying like, hi, like, what do you need? And like just talking to them. Like a lot of the times when someone's approached in that capacity, or when it has to do with substance use or recovery, it's like people think that the immediate need that needs to be taken care of is the active use or the drinking. Like they think immediately that's what needs to be taken care of. But like, you don't know their story. Maybe they have an undiagnosed co-occurring mental disorder. That's number one. Solve that, and here comes substance use. That might, you know, right there, 2 birds, 1 stone kind of thing. Homelessness, like they haven't eaten in 3 days. They should probably have some food and water before you try to start talking to them about recovery. Like it's just, you know, you would just have to know what you're treating or helping with first. And that's what I think helping, there's a difference between like helping someone and helping someone for yourself. Like if you just go up to someone and you're like, you need recovery, look at me, I did it, you can do it. Like you're just helping yourself. You just want to tell them that you did it. And then you can go to your friends and be like, I look at them, they're so great now. There's a big difference between just helping someone to help them. No expectation, nothing attached, just there. What do you need? Okay, let's start with this. Okay, you need help here. And then eventually we have this retreat. They won't, like, if you're interested, and they're like, no. And then next year they're like, actually, yes, please. And then they're a leader one day. Like there's a big difference between doing it for yourself to just be like, look what I did. And then actually being there to help them for whatever that may be. And it might not necessarily be right away for the substance or alcohol. It might just be what their heart needs. Maybe they just need human connection. They need a conversation because they've never been able to talk to someone about this. And then it grows from there.
You give a great example of what that process looks like. So many people do come in and say, oh, you're an addict, let's do these things and get you off of whatever your substance of choice is. And they don't even think about, you know, it's really hard to quit using if you can't get out of the house you're using in, or if you're homeless. How do you get a job when you're homeless and you don't have a mailing address, or you can't take a shower, or you haven't eaten in 3 days? Like you said, like very core human things that need to be met before you can even think about dealing with the addiction side of it, you know, and the, you know, almost the symptom of everything else happening in their life, that you have to meet them. And that's it's a hard concept to understand a lot of times. But if you're digging in and want to help somebody, you have to make sure they're fed. And, you know, what are you going to do to get them to the point where they actually can make a decision and listen to what you're saying? It's a great example of that process.
It's been just a great conversation today, guys. Julie, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking with us, because I wish we had your email. If anybody's in the New Richmond area who needs some help and wants to be in a sober house, Onyx House, I think it's on the website.
No, that wasn't even close.
Not even close. So let you do it then. If someone wants to get in touch with Onyx, what do they do?
You can email onyxsoberliving@gmail.com is my email address. So anybody who wants help, please email. Onyx
is ONYX.
ONYX soberliving@gmail.com.
And we're in great support of Julie. We want to do anything at Came to Believe Recovery that we can do to help support Julie's organization as she is supporting us. We're working together to try to just end addiction, right, Julie? Just like
end addiction.
That's what her sweatshirt says.
Yep.
So there we go. Thanks for coming on, Julie, and we'll see you soon when I'm back out there in Amory. And good luck at the
Yeah,
retreat in a few weeks.
absolutely.
All
Thank
right.
you so much for having me on. You guys have a
Happy
good day.
Easter.
Bye, Julie.
Happy
Bye-bye.
Easter.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, yeah, she's out now. So, Alicia, we should give a plug, now at the end, we talk about all this stuff, harm reduction, enabling, and what we hope is, or at least if some do, if you find your way and you want recovery and you want to go through the program like the founders did, find us at Came to Believe and look for an upcoming retreat. Because guys, when people get ready and they're in that right place, and this is the recovery path for you, if this is, taking these steps over a weekend, the way the founders did it and living in the go has changed thousands of lives over the years, and it changing them constantly. And so we'd encourage that anyone interested and they want to learn more about what we're talking about. We'd love to help them, right?
Yes. Yes.
You can come in here, Alicia and I speak. Alicia's going to do steps 1 through 9 in Loma Mar.
No.
It's an inside joke.
No.
But, so we'd like it, and if that's not your path, please, and you're needed, we just figured go somewhere, do something if you're ready. We know there's other ways to get sober and other ways to get help, but there's lots of paths out there. Go out there, call us, we'll help, and hopefully we could be, maybe we're going to be a one of the options for you for getting help. CameToBelieveRecovery.org. Yes, ma'am.
I think it was April, I'm scrolling, that said, I wish there was retreats by me. Do we know where April is? Let me try to find it here. I think it was
Somebody
her.
said, I wish there was ones in Florida, and there is in Leesburg. There we go. Leesburg is pretty central to Florida. I mean, if you're way down in the Keys, it's a bit of a drive, but from everywhere else, it's a couple, 3 hours. It's central Florida, right near Ocala. It's in the horse country of Florida. All right, we have our t-shirt giveaway coming up in a minute. Let's give it one more minute, Sarah, before we do it. Hashtag recovered for the t-shirt giveaway. And we will run the... Are you going to be able to run the thing with all the confetti today, Sarah? Yes, she says yes. So we like that with the confetti. And Alicia, it's been great to have you on too. Are you going to be on next week?
No.
Put you on the spot. No.
I'm not.
All right. So next week, we'll have a co-host. I think it'll probably be Dee from the UK again. And then I think there's going to be a UK takeover the week after. And it's going to be a UK week here. And Dee has been very excited about that. Almost too excited about the UK takeover. But just like back in 1776, we're going to take it back from the British. See?
We can give him a little bit and then take it back.
That's exactly right. Take it right back. Anyway. All right. Why don't we do it, Sarah? Let's do the t-shirt giveaway.
An error. Oh, there it
is. Doc, you can't win it again.
I know. He wins like so many. Yay, Shelly.
Yes. Shelly. That's new. Do anybody know Shelly?
I don't know Shelly.
Don't know Shelly.
So does she put her size in the comments? Or what
Yep.
does she do?
Put your size and your address in the comments, and we will have a shirt sent to you. So congratulations. There's Tom Clancy. Tim Doyle's with us too. Tim Doyle's really been the spearhead in this retreat in Kansas City. Hi, Tim. How are you? Tom Clancy, he's big, going to help us in Indiana. He doesn't maybe know it yet. Now he just did. Found out, Lisa, that he's helping. He's helping. I think he is, right? And let's see who else. Wow, we're getting a whole bunch of people showing up here at the last minute that we didn't see before. Well, everybody, wish everybody a happy Easter if you celebrate Easter. And some time off. I think we're all going to head off today after this. I've told everybody they can. I said to the
Don't answer your
there
phone.
yesterday. I said, well, we're off tomorrow. Oh, but we have to do Recovery Live. So I don't know how that wasn't very off. But wish everybody happy Easter again. Came to believe recovery.org. Look us up. Oh, a big plug for our documentary from City Teams, guys. We got a view of it. Alicia and I saw it, and Lisa and Casera, we saw it yesterday. The first cut of the documentary that chronicles what we did out at City Team in California, and it's really powerful and moving. We should have a cut of it for you to see next week, if not the whole thing, if you want to sit through it. But stay tuned. It's really powerful, and it's going to allow us to touch a lot of people in a lot of ways. Help us raise some money so we can do more of that, and help us get into some places that have been resistant to the message that we have, to at least let us be an option so that people can find this way to recovery. So I want to, you got any last final words, Alicia?
I do not.
Not
Happy
you.
Easter.
You have no final words.
I know, right?
No question.
Let me think. It would be questions, and then we'd have to stay on for another half an hour.
See, guys, the funny thing with Alicia, she thinks and she looks at you, and then I get an email later that says, "Hi, I have questions.
I have some questions.
Should I put them in writing?" And then you write them. And I'm like, of course she has questions. And when I met her husband, he laughed because apparently she has questions for him too.
Every day.
So him and I were a brotherhood, because he's like, you're going to handle these questions. It was.
And then you answer me, and then I have 3 questions on each answer that you gave me. I just want to be clear that I understand. That's all.
All right, everybody. Well, have a great Easter weekend. And we'll see you next week right here on Recovery Live. So have a great Easter.
Happy
Bye, everybody.
Easter. Oh, there's music.